morning, everyone. Welcome to our Candid Coffee today. We are so glad that you took some time to join us. I'm Danny Ratliff here with Richard Rosso and Jonathan MCCarty joining us. We are RIA advisors. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 money habits of unhappy couples and the habits of happy couples. So giving you guys some tips on things that we've seen that really made relationships struggle. Also, some people who have very, very healthy relationships, and a lot of this stuff comes back to money. So talking about what we can do better and maybe what we should not do. So a little bit of housekeeping. We are Clarity Financial, doing business as RIA advisors, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We are a fiduciary. None of this is any recommendations, just purely educational, just talking today, open conversation. So we do encourage you, please ask questions. If you see in the comments, it should be on your far right. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. We will try to get to those. We try to keep this, if you've joined us before, right at an hour, just to be mindful of everybody's time. But we will want to get through this and answer any questions that you may have. So once again, thanks for joining. So what are some of the bigger things, Richard, Jonathan, that you've seen? And Richard, maybe you want to start, but I think disrespecting credit is huge.
Yeah, I think credit scores are so important, right? And some people don't talk about cards. They don't talk about credit, or they misuse credit. A matter of fact, there's a study that shows you how many couples, there's one party that has a credit card without the other party knowing it. So, or they allow their partner, which I find that the biggest red flag, to use their credit. And then the partner turns a blind eye to misuse until it's too late and they're a hole. So I always say, if a partner wants to use your credit for something, say your own card, obviously you know your partner better than anybody. In the beginning of a relationship, I think it's a red flag. So you've got to make sure you're respecting the credit of the household and also respecting the credit that each of you have. And I've just noticed that this is one of the worst violations that I've seen in my history of working with clients. So Jonathan, we brought Jonathan on only because he's got all these certifications and he's great at what he does, but he's just got married, right? So Jonathan's newlywed. So, it's interesting to get your perspective, Jonathan, only because how did you all handle you both had credit coming in and what you will get as far as credit going forward? Do you have rules that you all are using, say, around credit?
Yeah, thank you, Rich. It was different, being that we were both, established professionals in our fields, trying to come together and merge our styles. My wife is a polar opposite of me. She's incredibly conservative. She does not like investing in general. She prefers to keep her money in something like a high yield savings account. So I guess it is true, they say opposites attract, and we could not be further from each other on that one. So talking about the effective use of credit and the appropriate levels of credit was something that we started our relationship on. It took a couple of tries before we figured out a system that worked for us. We did attempt to use the shared card approach, but it made it difficult for things like surprisings. I like to occasionally surprise my wife with gifts, and she is very on top of her finances. So she would see a charge show up at a store that she recognizes, and then she'd send me a text message almost before I got out the door of the store, like, "Hey, do you know what this is?" I say, well, I do, but you're going to find out in probably about 30 minutes. So, it's important to have those conversations around how you can best structure your finances so that you can maintain a little bit of autonomy, but still having those guardrails in place that you're not getting each other into situations you're not comfortable with. So we ended up going with kind of a split finances approach. We have our general household account, and that's where we put all of our joint funds for bills. And then we maintain our separate accounts so that we have the autonomy to do those types of surprises for each other. So I would say that was one of the biggest things that we took a little bit of time getting used to, being that we're both very independent and came in having to make compromises and being a little more set in my ways, or as she likes to point out, the stubborn one. It was a challenge for me, to make those kind of concessions and to be more accountable to somebody else.
That's great though, because I never thought about it that way, about you want to get your wife a surprise or your spouse a surprise. Now, they're maybe not going to be as diligent as Mrs. McCarty checking it, but you can see that sort of blows the whole thing. Like, what's this chart?
But that is a great idea, and that's something that we've always done as well, is keep a little bit of a separate, so everything goes into one place. But then, it's the money that she can't question me and I can't question her, right?
Correct.
And so if you want to feel like, hey, you want to go on a trip with your girlfriends, you want to go, buy a Christmas gift, something of that nature, you can do so. And I think that's the real beauty of it. But you still need to keep some guardrails in check as well. So where, like, for us, the majority of any funds that are made go into one account, and then we have a set amount that says, listen, this is the money that I'm not going to ask you about. And we don't spend, we don't go buy lavish gifts for each other. So it's not really a big deal in that aspect of things. There's really probably not a whole lot that we would know. It's kind of funny because, the way they do credit cards now, it used to be that, you could have joint credit cards. And now, it's in one person's name. So like all the credit cards are in my name. She can't even see it, even though she has a card with her name on it. So that's changed things a little bit in that aspect, where I don't have to, feel like I need to go spin it out somewhere else. But for us, we kind of keep it all together, with the exception of small, kind of, that's your fun money.
Makes sense. Again, you also have to know each other and how you're going to approach this dynamic of credit.
Yeah.
I think that's also important, and that's what you're all doing. You're adjusting within the marriage. And Jonathan, I'll say something to you. I mean, it's okay your wife's conservative, which means, though, she's probably really good fiscally, right? She's not going to be out there I'd rather have somebody too conservative than just living for the moment and today and want to go, hey, I'm going to put all our savings into Bitcoin, or whatever it is, right? So I think it's good that you do have a spouse that might rein you in a little bit and give you that perspective of protection and security. And so I think that that's great. But I've just noticed this credit issue comes up a lot. And especially for one party that's not monitoring what's going on the credit cards, this can get wieldy. And what I noticed in the beginning of relationships, and I'm proud to say I've broken up quite a few. Like, no, he's not right for you. No. Like this couple, they were about to get married, but he kept asking her to pay for stuff, and then he was going to pay her back, and then he was going to pay her back on Monday, and then it was like wimpy, paying her back on Tuesday, and then he wasn't paying her back, and I'm like, no. I mean, first of all, you allowed him to use it. Second, he's telling you that he's going to do this, and he doesn't. So that's one. Rosso interfered and poof, blew it up.
I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. He was doing the wimpy, but he wasn't even doing what Wimpy. I mean, we never really found out whether Wimpy did pay.
Yeah.
That's the one thing Popeye leaves open for everybody. Did Wimpy actually? I've never seen a cartoon. He goes, "Here, Popeye."
Quite a tab he's got run up.
That's right, a tab. We don't want your partner to run up a tab.
So, Jonathan, you talked about how you guys have kind of come to a decision on how you guys are sharing finances now, right?
Yep.
And Rich, you and I talk about this all the time. The most successful families, the most successful couples in general, they communicate really, really well. And, Michelle and I have been together now, 18 years. We've had to change what we do, how we do, as our families evolved, expenses change, things that we do like that. Priorities and goals, objectives have changed. So I think the communication aspect is super important. And, even here, I think I could always do a better job with that. And I see the pitfalls of not doing so. I see the families and couples that do really well. Jonathan, how have you guys, it sounds like you had to have some communication and talks about this to get to where you are today. And that may still change yet in the future when you start having kids.
Yeah, if you ask my wife, we have fantastic communication. She talks and I listen, and it works very well for us. But
yeah, you're smart.
I figured this marriage thing out. But no, in all seriousness, I think communication is absolutely fundamental, and it helps that my wife works in HR. So sometimes I come in and I feel like I'm sitting across the table from HR and getting a stern talking to, but in a very friendly tone. But I think that we were very able to effectively convey our positions on key issues that were related to our finances as a newly married couple, and then being able to resolve any discrepancies in approach that we had and come to a mutual agreement that made both of us comfortable. You know, at the end of the day, neither of us wanted to feel like we were doing something that was outside of our comfort range. And if we're going to have a long-term relationship, we need to make sure that we're aligned on these key issues.
Yeah, I want to just take a step back and explain to everybody, we're using a new system called StreamYard. And, you know, I'm having a little bit of frustration with it because usually in our Candid Coffees, we want participation with you all on this. This is the most important part that we don't seem to have right now. So we don't need to be talking at you. We want to give you this data. Going forward, we will make sure that you all participate because that's the goal of Candid Coffee.
Well, just do me a favor. Go into the comments section and post a comment. Let us know you're here because usually
let us know you're here. If you have a question, please let us know. We always love to see the interaction with everybody. So we want to make sure if you have any questions, you are absolutely putting them down for us because we're really glad you're here. You spent the time to be with us. We do this as a kitchen table kind of situation back and forth, but it's not just us. It's never all about us. It's about you. And so let's go ahead with the next one. Okay, and there's Tony saying, thank you. Good morning, everybody. All right. So,
all right. Awesome.
So did we talk about the last one we talked about was the, now we're going to talk about the blueprint, right?
Yeah, and so I think that, you know, this is something you talk a lot about, and we've done a Candid Coffee on money scripts, right? And how important that is. And so this kind of goes back to the money scripts aspect of the DNA of things that you've observed, things that have happened throughout your life, that communication aspect. You know, I try to talk to the kids often about money and also, you know, make sure they understand and know what we're doing on a regular basis. So they start, even at a young age, start to develop just an awareness of, you know, what things cost, how we think about money, what we use money for. And, you know, it's so difficult in this day and age because they don't see actually the exchange of money anymore. They see you pull out a card, they see you get on the phone, you can order something from Amazon and maybe
you get a box, right? You got a box.
Maybe here the next day. So they don't quite get it in the sense of what it used to be. And so I think that's a challenge at this day and age. And so that is something I think that, you know, the communication aspect, not just with your partner, but with your family is so crucial.
So keep in mind, I mean, the blueprint that you have, and it doesn't mean even all the things you're taught, it's the observation. The communication is very important because I don't know what the kids are going to be in 20 years where they're looking at, hey, I have a credit card, I get a box. You know, what's their finances look like together? You know, it seems like it's all for living for today because everything is so convenient, right? And when I was growing up, we didn't really have that, right? So, but you do observe your parents. If your spouse or your significant other was an observer of grandparents and parents, they might be picking up the worst traits, or they might go totally the other way. So that blueprint is going to imprint you. Their blueprint, their inner conflicts, their inner thoughts of money, that mindset is going to pass to you. And you have to figure out whether or not you want that blueprint in your life or not. So this is a very convoluted kind of thing. It's not just verbal, it's just subconscious. This is the work of Brad and Ted Clanton, who are financial psychologists. And it makes sense that you want to ask your significant other, how did you learn about money? What lessons did you get? I'm interested. Here's mine. Here's what I learned. You know, for me, my dad was a huge spender, but my grandparents were Depression era. He looked at that and went the total opposite way. So I'm a little bit more like them, but him, and I'm sort of a balance because I understood my money script overall. So you have to understand your own blueprints and how they're going to come together. Like Jonathan, your wife is she's very, you know, she wants that safety. Somewhere along the line, she picked that up. either because someone in her family wasn't good with money or safe with it, and something happened and she didn't feel secure, or they did and they communicated it and she picked it up. It would be really interesting for that part, to know the origins. How did you become the person you are with money? So that's really important. And I think it's tough for people to ask that question. I think it's tough for couples in the beginning. How did you learn about money? Because I observed my girlfriend Amy with it and how she's really good with it. And then I learned, I said, well, how did you get this way? Tell me a little about one experience in your childhood that maybe cemented this. So you want to ask these questions to your future spouse, current spouse, partner to get a handle on the blueprint. It's so important.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, how did you figure out that she's so conservative, doesn't want to do an investing? Did something happen in the past where she lost money or saw a loved one lose money, or maybe parents in like the great financial crisis? I see a lot of that. Is that maybe part of her experience, why she is so conservative with maybe the investing side of things?
I actually found out when we decided to become engaged. When we were preparing for our wedding, we kind of sat down and talked about our finances and the way that we have our assets positioned. And that's when I found out how conservative my wife was. And when we kind of talked a little bit about it, turns out she is kind of the opposite of most of everyone in her family. Her family all are very familiar with investing and comfortable with it. She is just incredibly risk averse. And she prefers to sacrifice the return potential to have that safety and security of knowing that her funds are protected. She likes the high yield savings account option because of its FDIC insurance coverage. And it's really just an aspect of her personality being so risk averse and more conservative in nature. But no, it was very strange to me as well because, her family, they're all investing. Her father actually likes to trade zero DTE options. So, he's a very established investor, very comfortable with taking risk. That's an incredibly speculative type of strategy to employ.
Yeah,
so,
sure is.
Yeah, so it was interesting, but it does align with more of her personality. I wasn't overly surprised, although she's well aware that she's sacrificing return potential. But for her, it doesn't matter. It's not about trying to earn as much as she can. It's about being able to sleep at night.
About peace of mind. Yeah,
it is. So Tony brought up a question, and I think it's added a little bit out of the scope, but it does have a discussion that parents have to have about a child, that if they're big wage earners, they want to assign some of their income to their child. This one's difficult, Tony, because I will tell you, the child's got to have earned income for Roth, custodial Roth. So if they're teenagers and they're working, my daughter was 16 years old. We set up, she was working at HEB. She was able to work at HEB at 16. And she set up a custodial Roth. Well, I set up a custodial Roth for her. So you got to be within the IRS guidelines. Make sure that because some people will use babysitting, working, helping out at the office, but starting from birth to assign it, unless you're doing some form of irrevocable trust out of the estate perspective, I don't really think that's a good. I don't know really any other way that you're going to able to assign some of their income.
Well, if you were a small business owner, you could find ways to put them into give them a role and actually pay them.
Yes.
You've got to be careful just from a tax perspective on keeping it under certain amounts. That is an option. So if you owned a business, that would be a great thing that you could do. There's also, if you wanted to put funds aside, Rich, we haven't talked about this a whole lot. You could look at like a permanent life insurance policy. Something small, that would be a way that you could put funds aside that would give you some ability. Now, if you were able to find a way, Tony, I love that you're thinking about the Roth. The Roth is a great place. We want that more tax efficiency, especially when they get older, that tax-free growth. That's, I think, is really important. But yeah, I think that you're on the right track in the way that you're thinking about children, setting aside things. Also, a new rule with the 529 that just came out this year is that you can actually open that 529 plan. If it's open for 15 years and the contributions have been in there for at least 5, you can actually utilize $35,000 worth of those funds and roll those to a Roth IRA. Therefore, finding another use if they're not using all of it for college. So just a couple of different ideas.
529 could work.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing though is it's not going to help their tax burden, any of these things, but it could, like you said, assign some of the income to the child and for the prosper of the child in a very tax-friendly way.
Yeah.
You got to check the IRS because they really stickler for, you have your like 5-year-old picking up newspapers at your office. So look it up but it is viable. You can do it.
When I was young, I was putting Avon books door to door in neighborhoods. Was how I was making money. And then, side gigs of it. I mean, nothing other than that kind of stuff that would give the ability to do those types of things if you would file, taxes, right?
Now we know why Danny smells so good. I finally figured that out on this candy.
Fantastic skin, Danny. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Skin's so soft. That's what it is.
Skin's so
Absolutely. Soft. So this is a big one. Bailouts. I mean, how many times do you see bailouts? And Richard, you and I talk about this a lot in the sense of we see couples basically bankrupt their retirement to save their kids. Or you see couples really get thrown off path because one has to bail the other one out, right?
Consistently. It's not just one.
Really poor decisions.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this one, I'm amazed how many times one spouse bails out the other, or one partner bails out the other, or children bail out kids. It's like, I've been working with some couples for 25 years, parents that still bail out their adult children. And I'm like, you all got to learn. Like, when is that going to happen? And I see it now happening between partners, which I don't like, because there is some hidden resentment by one side of that. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're starting this business, but you don't have a plan, and then that fails, and then you got to find a job, and there's a lack of security and a bailout by the party who's making more money than the other. And after a while, I worked with a party that one of the participants was just so bitter and resentful after about 4 bailouts, the relationship was not salvageable. So it's okay to have personal boundaries and saying no. It's okay. Don't get guilted into it. I know it's not hard, but I see, a lot of bailouts across the board. Yeah, and there are children bailing out parents because senior parents click on everything.
Yep.
They click on everything. Don't click on that. And they wind up losing money, and they wind up having their children bail them out. So we're in this, listen, the government taught us this. It's okay to be bailed out, except we can't print our own money, right? So with partners especially, though, to limit this discussion, there's a reason why you keep bailing out this partner who maybe you believe in them. Maybe you think this business is going to work, half laundromat, half I'm selling masks for COVID, and this is going to work, or cat litter and beer, whatever you're doing. There's some business plans that come to me that one partner wants to fund and the other one is so excited, and I'm like, do you ever pass a strip center and you look at the name of a company and then you go and you take a bet with yourself on how long it's going to be there? That business is going to be out.
Or you've seen 5-6 places in that same spot before, and you think somebody's going to try the exact same thing in that exact same spot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So the thing is, I'm trying to say is, this is a red flag. Once is fine. Like, we had one partner that one of their significant other had a gambling problem. Promised that he was going to get some help. He never did, and he kept having to be bailed out, where she just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a point where you're going to get suckered in. You're going to help your partner, and it may be very legitimate. You got to take the blinders off and look at it for the situation it is. But I am coming across this much more today. than I have in the past. So I put that in there as something that we need to, that you
Well,
all need to be aware of.
just like those store owners or the restaurant that thinks it's going to be different this time, burn me once, right? Burn you twice. You got to start setting some boundaries and say, listen, I can't do this anymore, right? Because now you're hurting yourself, but you're hurting them as well, because you're not teaching them to stand on their own 2 feet. You're not teaching them the responsibility that they need. And this is a hard thing for many people, right? Because I've seen this with loved ones. It is extremely difficult. You want to help, you want to be there. But at some point, you're just furthering the problem, because you're their insurance, you're their backup plan. And, I've seen couples who literally have gone through so much stress. I guarantee it's taken years off their life with this. And they're also at some point going to run out of money. This is just going to be the case because they continuously help. And now you don't have that backup plan either that you can fall back on the kids, because they can't take care of themselves, much less take care of, they're not gonna be able to take care of you. So, keep those things in mind. It is really difficult, but, the resentment with financial success is always interesting to me, Rich, because everybody aspires to it. And Jonathan, you see this too, especially like in, social media. Everybody wants to have all these fancy things. We see that all the influencers are the people renting fancy cars and jets to go take pictures on them for 10 minutes. And, everybody wants to be like these people, but the people who have built themselves up, done the blood, sweat, and tears all along the way, it seems like they're resented by many. And, loved ones also can be resentful. This is always what I find. I struggle with this because I want to see people succeed, whoever you are. And at that mindset, I can't quite get there, but I know it's there. What do you think about that, Jonathan?
Absolutely, and you see it, just kind of a general observation within our society, is that in a marriage and a husband and wife scenario, is often looked that the husband should be the primary breadwinner, and we're seeing that kind of shift demographically to where it is more of an even playing field, and oftentimes the wife is the one bringing in more of a share of the income. And so that can cause some tension in the relationship as well, just because of the expectations that we've grown up with our whole lives, that as the husband, it should be the one providing, but it really should be looked at as a partnership. If my wife happened to bring in more funds than I did in any given year, I would be celebrating that fact, because that means that we're both doing very well and very successful. But, historically speaking, and just as a societal observation, that's not always the case. And it can lead to some resentful feelings about not being adequate enough, or not being as good of a partner as you should be in the eyes of everybody else.
Yeah, and then you wind up resenting the partner making more money and doing that, which is what I come across, where the woman is making more money. She's trying to rationalize it that it's for our household, like you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, you pay for it then. You're the one who makes all the money. Very much resentment, which is really an issue with that person, right? It's not any issue against her. It's his problem.
Well, and
that's the hard part you got to realize. So
yeah, if my spouse was earning more than me, I would be glad to hear that, because that means that she's not with me for the money I make. She's with me because she wants to be with me.
Yeah, exactly. I would look at it the way you look at it, but it's surprising that this is still an issue.
I'm trying to talk Michelle to go back to work. You kidding me? Hey, babe, they're old enough. Let's go. Come on.
I want a boat. Can we work that in?
I want a boat. I just want to save more.
I will tell everyone on this Candid Coffee, it is not an issue with anybody on this panel.
Yeah.
By all means, God bless you. Like, you want your partner to succeed. You want your partner to do well.
Absolutely.
That should make you
well. And if you don't, what does that say about your relationship already, right? You should want each other to be successful, to do well. You may need to dig a little deeper.
Exactly. What does it say about you, right?
Yeah.
Not to call anybody out, but what does it say about you if you're resenting that? There's some measure of inadequacy that you're feeling, that you're projecting onto your spouse or your partner, and that's not cool. So this kind of resentment, what I've noticed though, is very tough to dissolve.
Yeah.
Because the couples I've worked with that have this, one part of the couple is always bending backwards, trying, walking on glass, trying to make sure that he or she doesn't say the wrong thing. And I'm like, you have everything to be proud of. Like, just to keep the marriage together, because that other person's not going to feel as good about it. And it almost inevitably ends it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's important
so
to
this is a
address those
killer.
things right away.
It is. It's a killer.
Yeah.
It's a killer. Yeah.
Sorry, I keep jumping up. I've got a dog I'm about to resent. My wife took the kids out of the house, and I've got a dog that's extremely anxious for some reason. So
Get that dog in commercials to make more money.
here's one of them.
Tony said, get that baby in commercial. Oh, he could be in a commercial. Oh.
Somebody wants to go for a walk.
Yeah, she wants something. I don't know. She's probably telling me she needs to go out, but I'll deal with that later.
Oh.
All right. So, what about this one here? So, never permit a loved one, including a marriage partner, to take advantage of your available credit or ruin your credit score, intentional or not. Now, this is kind of tough, right? Because if you're relying on it, and now the way that credit is used and the way that they've set these credit cards up, it's probably even more of a challenge, being that your loved one may not be able to see what they're spending on a regular basis. Patricia made a good point earlier about, like a divorce. Bad credit, number one, does not mean you're a bad person by no stretch. Yeah. And there's a lot of times that you inherit this in a relationship that just wasn't, financially sound. But this is where this is really difficult, because you see and you hear, I know horror stories, and I know people who've had their ex-spouse who was taking out credit cards in their name and getting it sent to the house. They were, they find out later they have all of this extra debt and this credit that they didn't, they go to get a loan or get something. They're like, hey, you can't do this. Like, what? And they find out that they're in trouble.
Yes. So this is a little different. This is different than what Patricia went through. That was sort of imposed on her. This is where people are willingly doing that. But like you said, they're not being good gatekeepers of the current credit. And how sometimes you find out is the worst way, like Danny said. So you do have to run annualcreditreport.com and just go through it every year. It's not difficult. It's free, and you can just go through and make sure, heck, even if you're not worried about a partner, with the way things are today, you've got to make sure. And also there's some discrepancies you might need to clear up. So it's a really good idea to run this annualcreditreport.com.
Yeah, even nowadays, a lot of credit card companies will offer that as an additional service for their clients.
That's right.
A credit monitoring, where you can go in and look at it anytime you'd like, multiple times a month if necessary. I have it set up where anything that pops up on my credit sends me an alert to let me know there's a new application for credit or there's a new change in a balance. And I've actually caught fraud on my credit card that way by seeing a balance spike on a credit card that I didn't even use, that I just have had forever. So, I keep it open as my oldest credit card, but I don't ever use it. So when I saw the alert come up, it was very clear that something was wrong there.
Yeah. Again, I think a lot of this is about boundaries.
Yeah.
But the alerts are great. Yes. There are more cards and credit companies that are doing or running these for free, just part of the credit card.
I think most of them are doing that now as well. And then yet, like Erica just mentioned, you can stagger your credit reports to the three main credit reporting agencies. So do that every 4 months. That's always beneficial. But, where I have my credit card, I can get online. I can go and see my report. It gives me notifications anytime anything is done. Also the, like LifeLock, those other agencies, those can be really valuable as well to protect your credit even further. I know a lot of people that do credit blocks.
Yes.
We do that.
But they do
pain in the rear if you need to access it, right? If you want to go buy a car on credit or something of that nature. But I think it's really invaluable if you really need that peace of mind.
Especially for cards, like Jonathan said. Some people might keep one card and not really use it very often. So when they know they're using it for a planned purchase, you can credit lock it. So it's not as much of an inconvenience, like, oh my gosh, you're at the airport and you need to use your card, or you're at somewhere and you need it. For some lines of credit that are not used as frequently, having the credit lock is a good old fashioned way to help. But when it comes from a couple's perspective, they do what I noticed the most, and again, this is going into the other side of the coin, the more successful couples, what they do respect each other's credit. And they do actually do creditreport.com together. And they also go through their December. Like I have one client, we're going to talk about this, I'm pulling this forward, but they do a December money date. And part of the December or early January money date is they put everything on credit cards. And that's common, right? Because you can see your spending patterns, but then they go over their spending patterns and see, gosh, what did we all spend so much money on this year? Because the credit cards will, in their annual statement, will break it up really nicely, especially if you're using one.
Yeah, so, it's kind of like you used to have to go to Mint or something like that to kind of get it really itemized, or a Quicken, throw things in something like that. And now most of those places are, which is a neat tool to have, and the accessibility. But, I love doing it at least annually, but I think you should probably have this conversation even a little bit more frequently, just to make sure you're staying on track.
That helped me to realize I was basically paying Starbucks dividends. So,
Yeah. When you start to see the lump sum, like I hate to see the costs on the dogs, like the vet bills and the food, and I go, oh boy, you all need to get a job. So annually really impacts it. But yeah, you can absolutely pull your credit statements more often to just see what the trend is of what you're spending. And then we're also about big purchases. You talk first. Now, I know, Danny, you and Michelle have a dollar amount that you all talk about, but I came up with this rule. I thought it worked. Obviously, with inflation, $100.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It changed a bit, huh?
Bubble gum. But like, hey, there's something I want to buy that's $400 or $500. Now, maybe like you all said, if you have your separate account and that's what you want to spend it on, that's it. That's your money. May not like it, but that's the separate account and that's what you want to do. But I think that if you are going to make a big purchase, you all should talk. And I've noticed that sometimes people don't, and that creates a problem.
They don't. And so the key here is, so the separate accounts, number one, I think are great, and they're great for this purpose here. But remember, if you're setting those separate accounts, everything else has to be funded first before you start putting money in those areas, right? So, the retirement, the kids' education, you're going to buy a new house, the down payment, all those things need to be, you need to start funding that all along the way. And then the money goes out there. This isn't just to go, put all the rest, any excess. This is just the excess after all the other goals have been met, debt has been paid. So keep that in mind. But this is still a tough one, right? So we've had to change ours over the years, kind of like we mentioned, like SR, our family has grown. Expenses are greater, right? It used to be where, it could be $100 we could go to the grocery store. Now I think that's our largest expense that we incur. But so like on a grocery trip, something like that, we don't have like a hard set rule. Now we know the parameters. We're both fairly smart shoppers when it comes to that, I think. And we eat primarily at home. So that does help, but it is also can be expensive. Now it's funny. We went out to eat last night. Rich, I know you'll love this. And we had a family that we know pick up our dinner. And it was so funny because I thought, oh my gosh, you're going to think we're broke, because we had fajitas for two, little Mexican place. The kids had a school event and just ran to this place. It was kind of late last night. And so fajitas for two, everybody had waters. Now we have 3 kids, and we had a guacamole. And so they thought they got out of here probably like, man, they picked up dinner, thought they're going to pick up dinner for 5 people. They picked up dinner for like 2, if that. And they got off scot-free. So we try to make, and that's not every time, right? I mean, there are times that the kids, trust me, this is a little bit later. They'd had some snacks already. Sometimes they're getting their own kids meal, or they're splitting something as well. But the conversations need to be consistent and I think regular. And so that's just an example. But, with this this kind of rule, we also have another rule that we put on top of this, is that if we're going to spend over X amount, you have to wait a week. Okay. Unless it's just something that we both talked about and we absolutely we need. Because what we find most of the time is we think we need something right now, but if you wait, any big purchase, I mean, you may decide, well, there may be something else we could do better with this, or maybe we could go this route, or something else presents itself. And so I think that waiting some time on a big purchase is invaluable. I mean, that's really helped us a lot in saving money, and then, kind of taking a moment to think about it, not making any rash or impulsive purchases, and then it either delays it, and if you still talk about it, I mean, we have a deal, like if we're still talking about it a year later, we turn to the other one, just go get it. that's what you really want, but you've got to have some rules around that. I think that is extremely helpful for us.
Yeah, I think so. I think it also helps with discretionary spending, right? Especially.
Yeah.
So it does help from that perspective overall. But I think the most important part, I think the common thread through everything we've talked about is communication.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean, the communication part is really the big battle because everybody's busy. Yeah.
Any of those big purchase decisions, those are joint decisions for us, and we have similar dollar amounts in place. That Danny mentioned, and if it's going to be something that's a large purchase, even if it's something that's only for me, my wife is still part of the conversation, and we talk about the most efficient way that we could go about this.
And that's great because I even think on discretionary, like you said, say, hey, I want to buy this new toy, and it's $500. I still think it's worth you having that discussion, even though that money might be available to you. It's still really good to have that discussion with your partner.
Yep.
So.
Yep, absolutely. So, talk about this don't dismiss money DNA. We talked about this a little bit, Rich, but what are your kind of parting thoughts on that?
You got to find this working medium, right? Because you're not going to find somebody who's absolutely perfect the way you want them to be from a money perspective. You got to be careful. This is something I try to do, is watch judgmental language. And you got to say, well, do you really need that? That's sort of judgmental, right? As opposed to why tell me a little bit about it. In other words, watch your language because you might see a purchase as silly, and why would you need that? It doesn't make sense. You got to watch your language because, again, your DNAs are not going to be perfect together when it comes to money. So I think how you handle the conversations with respect, and it's a lot of times a hybrid DNA schedule. You may have someone who's not a totally big spender, but if they want something, they'll get it, as opposed to maybe, hey, you need to bolster your savings account. There's a way to do it because you're all going to affect the future household balance sheet. So this is where you both don't have, it's not like one's a complete spender and one's a complete saver. Everybody is a mix. Everybody is sort of a mix. And there's going to be some things that your partner buys that you'll go, huh? Why'd you buy that? Like, you just, like Jonathan, you needed another gun? Like what? No. Danny, bullets? No. But I mean, there's a way to, but Jonathan, maybe you want to share some color on this.
I was just going to say, my wife says that every time I come back from Home Depot. So,
yeah. How many different types of nails or screws do you need, Jonathan? I mean, you have 3 hammers already. What do you need? Yeah.
That seems like a playground sometimes, right? You just go in there and go, ooh, what do they got?
Yep. I didn't know I needed this, but now that I see it, I absolutely do.
This looks very cool. Yeah.
It'll be so much nicer to have this in my garage than have to go buy it for the one time I'll use it in, 10 years.
Yeah.
And that might be really silly. Your spouse looks at you and goes like you're an alien with no head.
Yeah, so, I use that anytime she puts something on the honey-do list. I'll go, well, to do that, I'm going to need to go get this. So.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty funny. But I think it's I think it's the respectful language. Like, yeah. Jonathan, does she buy something that you look at and you scratch your head? Because I do that a lot with Amy. I go, okay. And I'm always nice about it. I'm like, okay, well, you work real hard for your money if that's what you think you want to do. But do you ever try to,
There are a couple things on that list. Yeah, there's definitely a couple of things. She loves those the masks that ladies wear. That they put over their face. I grew up with all brothers. Yeah, I grew up with all brothers. I had no idea what those things were, and then these are like my guilty pleasure. It is a little terrifying, you get jarring when you come walking down the stage and think there's a robber sitting in your living room. But that's one of her guilty pleasures that I just don't quite understand.
That's funny.
Amy does that too, and I call her Jason.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Hide the chainsaws.
Yeah.
Erica mentioned that women goes clothes shoe shopping. It's funny with Michelle when she used to be in television, and I'm sure you can sympathize with this, Rich, with Amy. Is they used to want them in all these nice clothes, and Michelle would go find the fancy clothes at the store. Then she'd go to Ross or TJ Maxx
to find it. Yep.
Find it. Then she's like, "Look, I got 10 dresses," and I'm like, "Well, wait a second." She's like, "Look how much money I saved." But you got 10 dresses.
10 dresses, and how many pairs of boots do you need? And
yeah. But you were going to get granted, theirs is a little different because they can't wear the same thing over and over again on air.
Right. It's like you can't be wearing the same things on TV, and people sort of notice that. I think it's sort of picayune, but they do notice it. So, yeah, but I get that way. But yeah, it's
I tease my wife. Her favorite price is SALE. So.
Oh yeah. Just because it's on sale doesn't mean you need it.
Yeah.
You're still spending the money, but yeah, that's a big word. Yeah.
But it's great because now we get stuff that comes in that is off-brand, or somebody's like, "What do you think of this?" And I'm like, "Whatever you think, if you like it." But she's like, "Well, these are the style of this, but they're instead of spending $50 or $100, they were X amount." I'm like, "Well, all right, well, if you need it, whatever." So
but the way you handle it, because what I've had in conversations with couples that make purchases, and I get stuck in the middle of these, it's not a like, "Hey, you want this?" It's the language is one. It's not one of love or warmth. It's more of you don't need this. You're a jerk. It's just not good. So you got to realize you're not going to understand some of the things your partner buys. But they're not bad with money. They do mostly good things, but there's some things that they rationalize they want, just like you do, just like I do. Yeah, guys like cars, right? Motorcycle. I need how many screwdrivers
Guilty.
do I need? That's okay. It's not within the budget, and you don't have to demean somebody because they're doing these things.
And I think there needs to be that healthy balance too. I mean, because now I see that, we've gone on the other end where Michelle, her running shoes are falling apart and she loves to work out and run and stay healthy. And I'm like, go buy new running shoes. Well, I just bought these. I'm like, well, you bought them 6 months ago. There's no tread on the bottom. What are you doing? Go buy some shoes. These are things you need, not things you want, right? It's something you want to maintain an active lifestyle. And so you got to appreciate both sides of it, but you also can't live so far that you can't enjoy or get the things you need because you're afraid to spend the money, right?
But I think you're bringing up something really important, Danny, because you're also being sensitive to things that she likes. And I think this is really good nuance to the DNA. It's not something like she's going to maybe enjoy buying, but you're like, "Hey, you need to get this. You do this, you love this, and you want to stay healthy. You need new shoes. And if you're going to spend a little bit more money on them because they're more durable, you need to do that. Go for it. So you got to also encourage certain purchases that maybe your spouse doesn't or significant other doesn't want to make.
That's right.
Yeah, I actually used to have a client who'd make the joke that his wife was going to save him into the poorhouse. So
I've seen people do it. I've told a lot of people this story. I had a guy who would come in. The wife wouldn't come in that often, and one day she comes in, and after it'd been a while, and said, "Danny, are we broke?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, he likes to spend. The last week of the month, we're eating ramen noodles and pinching pennies." I said, "Well, why?" And these people have done very well and saved quite a bit. And he said, "Well, I don't know. We don't have enough money that comes into the account. Can we take more money? I mean, I feel like we're broke." And he kind of looked over at him, and they had several $1 million, and he said, "All right, look, I like to play a little game to see how little I can live off the last week of the month."
Yeah.
And it was a game for him, and he enjoyed it. And she wanted to strangle him. I mean, because they could have been eating steak dinners or doing, they could have lived a nice lifestyle, but he just got so far ingrained in this that he made it a game in his own head, which I think is kind of neat in some ways, but also like you got to enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? I mean, you don't have to live like you're in the depression, every day.
And
there's a balance.
New retirees will go through this where they're going to micro budget to death. And I get it. Because they're trying to see how much do they really need. And then and they understand, listen, you're getting variable assets and you're taking a fixed rate of money out, which oil and water. I'm taking, wait a minute, I got assets that go up and down, but yet I'm going to keep taking 5% a year out. Doesn't make sense. So new retirees, when they're not making a paycheck and now they have to decumulate, that mindset, that transition is difficult. And that's where also couples get to see another phase of their money DNA that maybe they didn't see throughout the accumulation years. So you also got to keep in mind there's a decumulation money DNA that you didn't even know you had that will emerge. Wait, he's never done this before.
Yeah.
Like, why is he doing this? Well, because there's no more money coming in. And he's, you know, so there's money DNA that's deeply embedded. And I think when you go through decumulation and you are taking money out of your accounts to create a retirement income, there's some element of that money DNA ignited that didn't happen when you were a wage earner. And it
That's
really
right.
starts to emerge. So there are phases to this money DNA. It sort of over time morphs and changes. So keep that also in mind.
So
the bailout rule is one and done. You know, it's a hard rule, but listen, you want to create this business, it fails. You did everything you could, it didn't work. If we do it again, if you can do the same mistake over and over again, or you don't have a business plan, or you're going to do certain things over and over again, I'm going to have to keep bailing you out. Children need to get this lesson down for their parents. Parents who are getting them retired and bailing out their adult kids absolutely need to learn this lesson. But it happens a lot with couples. And I have some couples that'll say, this is it. This is it. I'm going to give you this money and we're going to go for it. But that's it. Resentfulness is seriousness, right? You got to be careful of that. You can be a galvanized force. You can work together, gain greater wealth, or these bad money habits are going to trigger deterioration. So this financial drama is going to ruin it. This one's tough.
If it goes unaddressed, I mean, it'll build and build, and then it will it'll boil over at some point. That's how it goes.
It'll turn it into such a canyon. You can't jump it anymore.
Yep.
And you got to really be careful of it.
Yeah, and then understand the force that you can be together. I mean, if you guys are on the same page, I mean, it's going to help your relationship in so many different ways. And people talk about compounding of money, and I think we use that term too much in the financial industry because I'm not sure people truly understand how that works, or at least it doesn't work the way that a lot of these financial pundits tell us it does. But when you do these things together and you can create these habits, man, it really is a powerful force.
It is, man. And we said this on the radio show yesterday. You have one party, one part of the couple, right? One half of the couple that stayed home, raised a child. The other one went out there, earned an income, had to travel overseas, whatever it was. And I always have the couple that didn't earn as much apologize, always. Oh, well, she did all the work. He did all the work. I stayed home. I'm like, you don't understand. You're not giving yourself enough credit. If it weren't for what you're doing, you created this money synergy. You are absolutely as much responsible for the growth of this wealth as the party who went out there and did it. So don't sell yourself short if you contributed to the household in some form to allow that person to bring in more capital and you both align to get it invested and saving it properly. And that's a synergy. That's a synergy. It doesn't have to do with the money. It has to do with the attitude and, like you said, the alignment of the parties, Danny. Absolutely, it's absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial.
Couldn't agree more, Rich. I mean, just the cost of childcare alone on a monthly basis can be north of $4,000. So, I mean, that adds up.
How many times do you run a calculation, Jonathan, like when a couple says, hey, I think I'm going to go back. I'm still going to go back to work. And you go like, well, childcare is this. All right, even if you're able to, one child. All right, even if you take into account credits, tax credits, if those are available to you, you're not making as much. And the taxes you're paying in, it's not worth it for you to go to work.
Mean, if you've got two children, you need to be going into a position that's well north of six figures to be able to make that a net profitable choice.
Yeah,
There's
it's a lot.
there's a great calculator online that'll actually help you to do that. It's really interesting about one party works, one party and doesn't, and 2 children, 3 children, and you start to see you're gonna have to be that other party's gonna have to be making north of about probably 150 grand.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's scary. Hey, listen, kids are still worth it, but if you look at it in a monetary, the amount of money, and a lot of it's what we allow them to do as well, and we want to give them all the things that they, kind of let them figure out what they want to do and what their interests are and what they like and enjoy. But man, it's not cheap, and
no,
there's no free time. But thank you guys for joining us today. If anybody does have any questions, we may have time for 1 or 2. Another thing, Rich and I are typically on the show. Jonathan joins us he joins us on Fridays at 6 a.m. We are on AM 700. If you're not local to Houston, you can always catch us on YouTube. Or if you are and 6 a.m. is too early, go to our YouTube channel. Brent actually has a banner at the bottom of this. You can check that out right there. It's The Real Investment Show. Go like. If you think this information is valuable, please go share it with your friends. We love interacting with all of you. If you have a question that you want us to address on the show on Friday, go send it in. You can put it here. You can send it in. We will have a brief survey after this if you'd like for somebody from RA to contact you. We are a fiduciary. We don't have any products to sell. It is simply our expertise in what we do. We love providing information. We do a lot of different events. We're going to be doing some more events on webinars on Social Security, Medicare, tax smart retirement planning. We do, you name it, we probably talk about it, but we're going to spend some time just in depth. In fact, Jonathan, congratulations. He is NSSA certified. So that is, he's Social Security certified. So took some courses. So great asset, great tool. Him and John Penn actually just received that certification. So they are going to be taking over Social Security classes for me and Rich, which we are excited about. So thank you guys once again for joining. We're right at that time. So I'm going to let you guys get back to your weekend. Please take the survey. If there's something you want us to address in the future or you want us to talk about, please ask. If you'd like for somebody to reach out, we can do that for you there as well. Thank you guys. Y'all have a great weekend.